see any other humans for the first few days. Loch Ba was the first loch we had to navigate. It was a pretty wet start, but little did we know that this would be the last time we saw rain on this trip. But the fair weather would also bite us in the bum further down the line. But at least we were on the water. Loch Ba is a funny wee loch, the first loch. The average depth is only 2.5 metres. Because my dad... But at least we were on the water. Loch Ba is a funny wee loch. The average depth is only 2.5 metres. Because my dad dropped us off a day early, we decided...
In fact, who topped the timesheets for Racing Point, with Lewis Hamilton, the world champion, 5th quickest. And before we go, we can bring you some live action from the Battle of the Brits tennis event, which is being staged at the National Tennis Centre in Roehampton. It is, of course, organised by Jamie Murray, featuring the best British players in men's and women's tennis. And we're seeing a couple of them out on the court at the moment. That is Dan Evans, sporting a rather fancy moustache. He's playing Kyle Edmund at the moment. It finished a little bit too fairly frosty between the two of these when they played in their previous match, and it is Kyle Edmund on top at the moment. He took the first set. You can watch it live on the BBC Sport website and app, as well as via the iPlayer. Heather Watson as well among one of the early winners. We don't have Wimbledon, of course, do we, this year, but you can watch a bit of tennis at least. And that is all from the BBC Sports Centre for now. Plenty more to come in Sports Day. That's at 6:30.
John, thank you. The UK's largest tour operator, TUI, is cancelling thousands more holidays to Spain because of the quarantine rules introduced last weekend. It comes as the owner of British Airways says it will take until at least 2023 for passenger levels to recover from the impact of the pandemic. Simon Browning reports.
Another day, more holiday hopes dashed. TUI, the UK's largest tour operator, has cancelled more breaks to Spain because of the reimposed 14-day quarantine on travellers arriving home. Holidays to the mainland are cancelled until the 17th of August, to the Spanish islands until the 10th. TUI wants the government to remove the blanket quarantine policy and open up regional travel corridors to safe areas.
It's really been really tough for us as an organisation to manage, but it's been incredibly confusing for customers. What we've seen is a huge surge for Greece and for Turkey, so much so that we put on an extra 7 flights for this weekend. Now, normally those flights would take several months to actually fill up. Well, in a few hours, all of those flights were fully booked.
The impact of the pandemic, with the skies closed for months, has hit travel businesses hard. This morning, the parent company of British Airways reported an almost £4 billion loss for the first 6 months of the year. The boss of the company says he spoke to the Transport Secretary at the weekend. He wants a revision to quarantine policy.
The rate of new cases for coronavirus in the Canary Islands or in the Balearics was well below what we were seeing in the UK. So I think there is evidence there that would help us to make a case to have a regional approach rather than just a blanket ban on countries.
Yesterday, it emerged Jet2 has started to ask tourists to end holidays early and is cancelling flights. There is still huge uncertainty. Yesterday, it emerged Jet2 has started to ask tourists to end holidays early and is cancelling flights. There is still huge uncertainty. Yesterday, it emerged Jet2 has started to ask tourists to end holidays early and is cancelling flights.
Flexibility in case things change.
The government maintains public health comes first and decisions are made on data. But for tourists yearning for summer sun as Spain stays closed, the options are there, but it comes with the risk. Simon Browning, BBC News.
Time for the film review with Mark Kermode.
Hello and welcome to the film review with me, Mark Kermode, rounding up the best movies available for viewing in the home and in cinemas. During lockdown, while everyone was watching movies on streaming services, trailers for Unhinged proudly boasted that the film would open in theatres in July, with studio head Mark Gill calling it the canary in the coal mine for cinema reopenings. In America, where coronavirus cases continue to spike, Unhinged has inevitably had its release delayed, along with potential blockbusters like Tenet and Mulan. But here in the UK, the Russell Crowe actioner is now testing the waters as a wide theatrical release, hoping to draw punters back to the spectacle of big screen cinema.
Come on, man. Go!
Crowe stars as an aggrieved, overweight, aggressive ball of anger whose path crosses with Karen Pistorius' Rachel, a mother in the middle of a messy divorce who's late getting her son to school and herself to work.
I'm pretty sure that truck's following me.
He's road raging.
Why don't you just chill, man?
After she honks him at a traffic light and then refuses to apologise for her perceived rudeness, he sets out to teach her a lesson, pursuing Rachel, her friends and her family, while blaming her for his violent retribution.
Hey! Officer! Help! Roll your window down!
Pitched somewhere between Steven Spielberg's Duel and Joel Schumacher's Falling Down, Unhinged, from director Derek Bort, is a nuts and bolts affair that does exactly what it says on the tin, without ever really stopping to think about it.
Andy?
I'm sitting here.
Whose phone is...
Right across from your friend.
We know from the trailer that the action is going to involve Crowe wreaking mobile phone havoc in a diner and a giant truck running over a car. And that pretty much sums up the movie. A popcorn-friendly mix of interpersonal craziness and big, crunchy, car-bound carnage.
Can you see him? He's catching up.
It helps, of course, that playing a character with anger management issues is hardly a stretch for Russell Crowe. Although, unlike Michael Douglas's more interesting character in Falling Down, Crowe starts crazy and then just gets worse. You could hardly call this an analysis of societal rage. But watching 90 minutes of head-banging, pedal-to-the-metal big-screen thrills, I just found myself happy to be back in a cinema, succumbing to the magic big screen.
You bet your game. You're gonna need it.
Also getting a wide cinema release this week is Summerland, a film that could not be more different from Unhinged in every respect.
We were expecting you an hour ago. Sorry. Frank, this is Miss Lamb, your new guardian. I don't want him. You've all got to do our bit.
The brilliant Gemma Arterton stars as Alice Lamb, a reclusive writer living in a South Coast village during World War II. Alice is considered an oddity by the locals, a loner who investigates and debunks myths and folklore, looking for the facts behind the fiction.
They don't look very interesting.
I wrote them.
When young evacuee Frank shows up unexpectedly on her doorstep, Alice has no time for him, insisting that he be rehomed. But inevitably, a bond grows between the pair, with Alice warming to her new charge as we learn about the love and loss that haunts her own past and the possibility of magic in the future.
Was she the one you loved?
Would you think it was strange?
No.
Written and directed by Olivier Award-winning playwright Jessica Swale, Summerland is a lovely, heartfelt film about matters of life and death that has its feet on the ground and its head in the clouds. In the central role, Arterton, who's also an executive producer, relishes the chance to play a character who doesn't care about what the outside world thinks of her, preferring instead to find refuge in her work.
He's not on his own.
Gugu Mbatha-Raw is perfectly cast as the face that haunts Alice's memories, reminding her of what love once felt like, while a supporting cast including Penelope Wilton and Tom Courtenay ensures that even the smaller roles have heft.
Miss Lamb!
What's most important, however, is that Summerland is a film full of hope, something we all sorely need right now.
Mrs. Litvak.
Hello, Mrs. Litvak. I'm extremely sorry for your loss.
From the heartwarming to the horrific with The Vigil, another new cinema release, this from the Blumhouse label who gave us Paranormal Activity, The Purge and Get Out. Written and directed by feature first-timer Keith Thomas, the story plays out over the course of one night, during which a troubled young man is hired to keep watch over a recently deceased member of the Orthodox Jewish community.
Sign it still?
Plagued with guilt and anxiety, Yakov discovers that Mr. Litvak believed he was being pursued by an evil spirit, a spirit that now seems to have set its sight on Yakov.
In the Premiership, Aaron Hickey, Hearts' second youngest goal scorer this decade. What do you think?
Harry Cochrane against Celtic.
Yeah, he did.
On explanation, big on atmosphere, thanks to cinematographer Nick Cook, composer Ben Salisbury, and sound designer Anya Prishgoda, all of whom add to the air of unease.
Thanks for the drinks.
Ruth, you don't need to go.
You can find Makeup on Curzon Home Cinema and in a selection of UK cinemas over the coming weeks and months.
The stars have their beginnings and their ends. For a few moments, somewhere in between, a few, very few, may support thought.
The late Johan Johansson was a brilliant composer who was Oscar nominated for his scores for The Theory of Everything and Sicario. He was also the director of Last and First Men, which played at the Berlin Film Festival earlier this year and is now available on demand from BFI Player. Inspired by Olaf Stapledon's cult sci-fi novel and narrated by Tilda Swinton, the film uses words, music and haunting footage of abstract monuments from the former Yugoslavia to evoke a vision of futuristic humanity on the brink of extinction.
The universal end comes in due course.
Growing out of a multimedia project unveiled at the Manchester International Festival in 2017 and completed after Johansson's death in 2018, Last and First Men is a hauntingly elegiac work described by its creator as a film that straddles the border of fiction and documentary, a meditation on memory and failed utopia contextualized through the literary mode of science fiction.
All right, well, I never thought I'd be saying
the last mission before Mars, and yet here we are making last preparations for the long journey.
Thank you.
The future of mankind, or rather womankind, is the subject of Proxima, the story of an astronaut preparing for a lengthy stint on the International Space Station in service of a forthcoming
Shove it in and screw it back up and back into the tray. Take another one, do the same again.
Nabble is to work as fast as you can.
The females in Carmarthen on the assembly lines, we were very skilled.
And then you had to check it to see if it was working, then you put it in a small tin.
You just kept yourself going because you were on a line, because it was continuous belt. So it was spiky work.
Mind-numbing probably would be the word I would use now. But in order to get your £9 bonus at the end of every week, you had to jolly well work hard to get that.
In '82, Camperdown did the most ever watches they'd done. It was 2.5 million in that year.
Timex was good for Dundee. Dundee was good for Timex.
But fast forward again. By the spring of 1993, Timex and Dundee are no longer best pals. In a 4-point plan, the company concedes ground on the forced layoffs, but insists that all workers must sign up to a wage freeze and
deeper into Europe, so those temperatures are going to drop by this time tomorrow. But through the course of this evening, it's still pretty hot out there, into the 30s across the southeast and well into the 20s, the high 20s across northern England and also into Scotland. On top of that, showers and thunderstorms in the forecast for some central and eastern areas of the UK, rumbling through with gusty winds and hail at times. But probably as we go into the early hours of the morning, those storms will blow themselves out and move into the North Sea. And then we'll start to see that fresher air off the Atlantic spreading in across the UK. But it's still going to be a warm night. We're talking around 18, close to 20 degrees there in East Anglia in the southeast, but a more comfortable 11 degrees in the Western Isles of Scotland. So here's that fresher weather on Saturday. You can see that plume of heat there across many parts of Central Europe. We've got these more yellows and oranges here indicating that cooler air off the Atlantic. So it's a day of sunny spells and occasional showers. There won't be many of them around, but there will be a few. You can see those little blobs of blue there affecting some parts of the country. But most of the time the sun will be shining, and a pleasant 25 in London, so quite a drop, closer to the high teens there for Belfast and also Glasgow. Now, how about the FA Cup final? It is looking very pleasant indeed. Ideal weather, temperatures in the low to mid-20s with some sunny spells. Now, Saturday and into Sunday, we'll see weather fronts moving across the northern half of the UK. So that means the weather's going to be a little bit more changeable.
Here to tell you what to think? Enforce an opinion? Or guide you left or right? Because in a confusing world, it's more important than ever to trust where you turn. Find your way through the US election with BBC News.
This is BBC World News. I'm James Reynolds. Our top stories. How does America's coronavirus response measure up to Europe's? The top infectious diseases expert in the US tells lawmakers that US lockdowns have been much less strict.
When you actually look at what we did, even though we shut down, even though it created a great deal of difficulty, we really functionally shut down only about 50%.
Spike in cases in northern England leads to new restrictions for 4 million people just ahead of the Muslim festival of Eid. It was seen as a model of how to handle the virus, but now Vietnam reports its first 2 deaths from coronavirus. And the film director, Sir Alan Parker, the man behind the musical Bugsy Malone, has died at the age of 76. Hello and welcome to BBC World News. The man leading the US efforts to contain coronavirus, Dr. Anthony Fauci, is giving evidence in Washington at a congressional committee looking at the handling of the pandemic. For 3 hours, health experts have been pressed on COVID-19 vaccine development, school reopenings, and the efficiency of President Trump's response to the virus. Here are a few of Dr. Fauci's comments.
We hope that as the time we get into the late fall and early winter, we will have, in fact, a vaccine that we can say would be safe and effective. One can never guarantee the safety or effectiveness unless you do the trial, but we are cautiously optimistic that this will be successful. If you look at what happened in Europe when they shut down or locked down or went to shelter in place, however you want to describe it, they really did it to the tune of about 95+% of the country did that. When you actually look at what we did, even though we shut down, even though it created a great deal of difficulty, we really functionally shut down only about 50%.
Let's go to Washington and speak to our correspondent,
of the country
Barbara
did that.
Usher.
When
Barbara,
you actually look at what we did, even though we shut down, even though it created
James.
a great deal of difficulty.
I'm not sure the other people are either. I didn't really hear anything new, I don't think. I mean, basically, this is the committee that investigates President Trump's response to the pandemic. And the Democrats wanted this hearing because they say there's no unified national response. And that's the reason why the country has struggled so much to contain the virus. The Republicans, on the other hand, have said that's a political narrative. There is a plan. In fact, these public health officials have written up reams of guidelines which have been sent to the states on how to reopen the economy, which have been followed in a sort of patchwork way. But the guidelines which they have also in this committee hearing on how to reopen the economy, which have been followed views in a sort of patchwork way, topics that are controversial. Why the guidelines? They have also in this committee hearing on how to reopen the economy, which have led to a spread of the virus in a sort of patch, sometimes turn to the health topics that are controversial. Why they have also in this committee hearing on how to unified economy, which have led to a spread of the virus in a sometimes turn to the health topics that are controversial. Why they have also in this committee hearing on how to unified economy, which
says the country has spread the virus for minutes. What can be done in opening society? Here's what they have England's chief medical officer. Who is the state of affairs for the first time in months? Then in London using what can be done doors tomorrow. Here's what Who is the state of affairs for the first time in months? Then in London using what can be done doors tomorrow. Here's what Who is the state of affairs for the first time in months? Then in London using what can be done doors tomorrow. Here's what Who is the state of affairs for the first time in months? Then in London using what can be done doors tomorrow. Here's what Who is the state of